Hey everybody, Keegan here, and today we're going to be talking about why most conspiracy theorists think that 9/11 was an inside job. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about 9/11 and I'm going to bring up about 10 things, like 10 pieces of evidence that you can bring up to your friends and family when you're talking about why you think 9/11 was an inside job. And when it comes to 9/11 being an inside job, the first thing you should always bring up is Larry Silverstein. Who's Larry Silverstein? Larry Silverstein is a real estate mogul and he owned three of the towers that came down. Now remember, two airplanes crashed into the buildings in Manhattan, but three towers came down. And I'll get into Building 7 here in a minute. But when you're looking at like a murder investigation, which is what 9/11 basically is, you should always do what they call follow the money. And when it comes to Larry Silverstein, he took out the world's largest insurance policy ever crafted on all three buildings just months before 9/11 happened. So it's definitely shady. And they call him Lucky Larry Silverstein because he normally ate lunch with his kids every day except for the day that 9/11 happened. So it's definitely weird. So look into him, Larry Silverstein. Number two on my list is NORAD standing down. What's NORAD? NORAD is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and it's basically like a league of jets that work together between Canada, America, and Mexico to prevent any kind of like outside hostile interference with how our countries work. So on 9/11, NORAD was scrambled, but NORAD was also doing exercises that day. And for the time that the airplanes during 9/11 were flying around, NORAD was all confused because they just happened to be doing an exercise. And so there's actually a stand down order by Dick Cheney for them to not interfere with the very last airplane that crashed into Shanksville. But anyhow, so that's number two on my list. Number three on my list is Building 7. So again, Building 7 was down the street from the two towers that were hit by airplanes, but it still collapsed into its own footprint. The BBC actually reported that it had collapsed like I think it was 20 minutes or something before it did. Like, how did the BBC know that Building 7 was going to collapse? So it's very weird. And also, Larry Silverstein did a documentary interview, and it was called The Day It All Came Down. And Larry Silverstein, during the interview, actually says that him and the fire department had made a decision to pull it, and what they say he meant now was pull the firefighters out of the building of Building 7 before it came down. But pull it is actually a known demolition term when you're blowing up a building that's rigged with explosives. So Larry Silverstein, he said that shit. Building 7, why did it come down? It wasn't even hit by airplanes. So Building 7 is definitely weird. Number 4 on my list would be free fall speed. Now, if you were to take a bowling ball and like this coffee cup and drop them at the same time, even though they weigh different things, they would both fall at the same exact speed, right? This is called free fall speed. Now, the only way they could do that is if there was no resistance. So each building, 1, 2, and 7 that came down that day, they all ended up falling at what's called free fall speed. And like, how would you do that? The way people think it happened is that they were also rigged with explosives. So whether or not an airplane hit them, it's neither here nor there. People think that they were actually rigged with explosives, and that's why they came down. So free fall speed would be my number 4 reason why I think 9/11 was an inside job. So 5 would definitely be thermite. Why were there traces of thermite and magnesium found at ground zero? The thing is, if you were to take a steel beam and paint it with thermite and then just drop magnesium on top of it, it will go through it like a hot knife through butter. And there's no reason why there should have been any traces of magnesium or thermite at Building 7. So it's very spooky. Number 6 would be the terrorists. The terrorists were supposed to be these like super radical Muslims, yet they were like partying with strippers. The the pilots that taught them how to fly at the different flight schools and stuff, they said these guys couldn't, didn't even know how to fly Cessnas, yet they were able to turn these giant airplanes around and go, all the way back to New York and stuff after they had taken off. Like, it's baloney if you ask me. So number 6 would be the terrorists. Like, they found one of their passports like at ground zero, yet the devastation was like great enough to bring both the towers down, yet they found one of the passports unscathed. Like, oh look, found one of these passports here. Like, I know that, a lot of you guys out there have heard about that, but, most of the terrorists, too, like 18 of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. They weren't even from Afghanistan. So number 6 on my list would definitely be the terrorists. They don't seem like Muslims, and most of them were from Saudi Arabia. So, why did we go to war with Afghanistan and Iraq? It's ridiculous. Number 7 would be the Bush family and the Bush connection. So, if you know about Bush, you know about the Carlyle Group and the oil company that Bush's family has, and how they do business with the Bin Ladens, which was really weird. During 9/11, people don't like to bring that stuff up. Bush, during 9/11, when it happened, he just kept reading listening to the kids read the little story, like the security service didn't whisk him away and take him underground. Like, it's almost as if he had prior knowledge and they knew that it was going to be going down that day. And then you have Cheney, when the NORAD could have taken the plane down. Cheney was like, yeah, the order still stands not to shoot it down. Did you hear any different? So they let the airplane crash into Shanksville and stuff. Like, the whole thing is shady. Number 8 is beforehand knowledge. Like, we've seen countless movies and cartoons like The Simpsons that talk about or like show depictions of 9/11 happening before it happened. Even though the World Trade Center is an iconic place and you would imagine that in movies they would depict it like coming down, the fact that it ended up happening is like kind of suspicious. Number 9 is the rise of the police state. So after 9/11 happened, just all of a sudden we had police on every corner. We had body scanners in the airports and stuff. And it just seemed like that kind of technology was already waiting to be rolled out. 9/11 was just a catalyst to kind of like unveil the technology. So the rise of the police state is at least an example of how 9/11 itself was used by the elites to, to unveil their new technology. And 10, one of the things that I would bring up is that 9/11 is not going to be the last terrorist attack to ever happen. 9/11, basically, it's only going to get crazier and crazier from here. So all we can do is hope that we can wake people up about what false flags are, and that's basically where you wear you wear your enemy's colors and attack yourself to blame your enemies. Like, that's what's going on right now. It's not radical Muslims, guys. It's the Illuminati doing their thing. But anyhow, I'm the clone Keegan, and don't roll your eyes at me.